My first red flag wasn't a direct confrontation. It was a chilling absence of warmth. Eleanor never openly criticized me. She'd just look at me with a kind of benevolent pity, like I was a stray cat her son had insisted on bringing home. If I wore a dress, she'd say, "That color is so brave on you, dear." Most people with your skin tone couldn't pull it off. If I cooked dinner, she'd smile and say, "It's a delightful little dish, Sarah." Very accessible. Everything about me, from my career to my clothes, was subtly filed under charming but inferior. The tension truly began after we moved into the Caldwell Guest House, a stunning piece of architecture on the family estate. It was a golden cage, and the bars were made of expectation and history. Michael was oblivious. He saw his mother as a devoted, if slightly traditional, matriarch. "That's just how Mom is," he'd always say. "She just wants us to be happy." Our wedding was 6 months away when Eleanor invited me over to the main house for a pre-wedding tradition. It was just the two of us sitting in the grand drawing room, surrounded by generations of Caldwell portraits. The air was thick with the scent of polished wood and unspoken superiority. She brought out a small antique velvet box. "Before you become a Caldwell," she said, her voice smooth and low, "you must know the history. This is the Aurelia necklace. It's a family piece. Every Caldwell bride has worn it on her wedding day since 1923. The necklace was breathtaking. A heavy, intricate gold chain, studded with tiny sapphires centered around a large, uncut emerald. It was priceless, not just in value, but in history. She let me hold it for a moment. It felt cool and heavy in my palm. "It will be stored in the main safe until the wedding," she explained, taking it back. "But you've seen it. You've held it. You are now officially a part of its story." I was touched, honestly. I felt like I was finally being welcomed into this formidable family history. 2 weeks later, Michael was away on a business trip. I was home alone in the guest house when I received a frantic call from Eleanor. Her voice was thin, almost unrecognizable. "Sarah, you have to come over, now. It's the necklace." I rushed over, my heart pounding against my ribs. The main house was usually silent, but now it felt ominously still. I found Eleanor in the drawing room, standing rigidly beside the empty pedestal, where the family safe was usually hidden behind a rotating painting. The painting was open, the steel door of the safe was ajar, and the velvet box was gone. "I went for my morning tea," she whispered, her eyes wide with what I assumed was genuine terror. The safe was open. Only Michael, his father, and I know the code, and you. My breath hitched. "Eleanor, I don't know the code. You only showed me the necklace. You didn't tell me the combination." "No, of course not," she said quickly, but her eyes held a flicker of something calculating. "But you were the last person to handle it, Sarah." Just before Michael left, the police arrived. I was questioned immediately, not as a witness, but as the prime suspect. The narrative, Eleanor's narrative, was simple and devastating. I was the outsider, the girl from a modest background who was overwhelmed by the sudden access to wealth. I had seen the opportunity when Michael left town, and I had taken the most valuable, most symbolic piece of the Caldwell history. "I found this," Eleanor said to the detective, her voice trembling dramatically, pulling a small silver-plated safety pin from her pocket. It was tucked just inside the safe, almost hidden. "Sarah always wears these to pin her scarf. It was my pin. the one I used to secure my hair when I worked. I had worn that scarf the day she showed me the necklace. I realized in that moment that she hadn't just shown me the necklace. She had carefully laid the groundwork. She had let me touch it. She had let me stand close to the safe, and she had waited for me to drop that insignificant pin. Or perhaps she had simply taken it from the guest house laundry basket knowing I wouldn't miss it. The police couldn't find a single other shred of evidence. No forced entry, no CCTV footage. But Eleanor's testimony, her quiet devastation, and that tiny, damning silver pin were enough to cast a shadow of doubt that would destroy my life. When Michael returned, he was shattered. He didn't accuse me, not directly. He just looked at me with an agonizing mix of love and confusion. "Sarah," he said, his voice raw, "just tell me you didn't." I told him the truth, over and over, my voice shaking with desperation. "I didn't, Michael. I swear I didn't. Your mother is lying. She is doing this to us." But his mother was a Caldwell. I was just Sarah. The police dropped the case due to insufficient evidence, but the damage was done. The engagement was called off, quietly, quickly. I left the guest house within a week, my reputation in tatters, carrying only what I came with. I lost the man I loved, and I became the thief who tried to steal a century of Caldwell history. I spent the next year trying to rebuild my life, constantly looking over my shoulder, the feeling of that cold, heavy emerald necklace forever imprinted on my memory. But the story wasn't over, not even close. Because Eleanor had covered her tracks meticulously, but she had underestimated one thing: my resilience. Or perhaps the sheer dumb luck of an open house sale many years later. The years that followed the Caldwell disaster were characterized by a dull, persistent ache. I moved across the country, reinvented myself as a successful design consultant, and meticulously avoided anything that smelled remotely like old money or suffocating family drama. I built a life, a good one, but I was always single, always guarded. The ghost of that sapphire-studded emerald necklace was a constant reminder of how utterly powerless I had been against Eleanor Caldwell's quiet malice. I had tried to move on, but I never truly forgot. I held on to the conviction that Eleanor was the culprit, that she had sacrificed her most prized possession just to get rid of the outsider, me. It was an extravagant, almost unbelievable theory, but knowing Eleanor, the drama and the control were the real currency, not the gold. Then, 6 years after the incident, life decided to yank the rug out from under me again. But this time, it handed me a tiny thread of hope. I was house hunting in a different state, miles away from the Caldwell estate. I wasn't looking for anything grand, just a quiet, older place with character. My real estate agent, a cheerful woman named Brenda, showed me a stunning property, a beautiful, large Tudor home tucked away in a quiet, affluent neighborhood. As we walked through the house, Brenda explained, "It's an estate sale, dear." The owner, an elderly gentleman named Mr. Harrington, passed away recently. A lifelong bachelor, very private. His nephew is handling the sale and is just liquidating everything quickly. The house was a treasure trove of forgotten history, filled with antique furniture and dusty books. As we toured the library, a massive room lined floor to ceiling with built-in mahogany shelves, something caught my eye. Tucked behind a row of encyclopedias was a small, unassuming wooden box. It wasn't fancy, just a simple, lockable desktop file box, the kind people use to store tax receipts or old letters. "What's in here?" I asked Brenda, pointing to the box. Brenda shrugged. Probably old bills. The nephew said we could just leave any junk behind. The house is being sold as is. Something compelled me, an instinctive, irrational tug. Would it be okay if I just took a look inside? If it's just bills, maybe I can clear it out and save the nephew some work. Brenda smiled indulgently. Knock yourself out, honey. I'll be in the kitchen checking the appliances. The box wasn't locked. The metal clasp simply snapped open. Inside, it wasn't old bills. It was a collection of personal effects, mostly just photographs and old travel documents. But underneath a stack of faded postcards, I found a small, spiral-bound notebook. It was cheap, the kind you buy for $1 at a drugstore, its cover scribbled with a single initial. E. My blood ran cold. E. Eleanor. Caldwell. I picked up the notebook. It wasn't a diary, but rather a journal of expenditures and cryptic notes. As I flipped through the first few pages, a date leaped out at me, the exact month and year of the theft. I began to read, breath held tight in my chest. The handwriting was neat, slanted, and undeniably Eleanor's. The entries weren't chronological. They jumped from garden club meetings to stock investments. But then a series of entries appeared, almost like a separate, chilling narrative. Date: 1 week before the theft. Meeting with H. Confirm details. He understands the urgency. The timing is critical. S must be gone before the wedding. Michael is too soft. She will ruin everything. Date: 3 days before Michael left. The pin is secured. It took nearly a week to get S to use the blue scarf. So careless. Amateur. The safe code changed last night. He believes it was a routine update. Good. Date: the day of the theft. Aurelia is gone. Perfect theatrical devastation. H was efficient. No trace. The police will focus on the outsider. My performance was flawless. Michael will be heartbroken, but he will heal. A Caldwell never marries a thief. I stumbled backward, hitting the dusty bookshelf. The sheer chilling audacity of it made the room spin. It wasn't just a betrayal, it was a planned, cold-blooded psychological hit. She hadn't just let me be blamed, she had orchestrated the entire thing with the help of someone named H. Who was H? And why was Eleanor Caldwell's incriminating notebook inside the house of a deceased bachelor named Mr. Harrington? I frantically looked through the rest of the box. Tucked into the very back, taped to the bottom of the box, was an envelope. Inside, a single professionally taken photograph. It was a formal portrait of Eleanor Caldwell, taken perhaps 20 years ago, and she was standing beside Mr. Harrington. They were smiling intimately, their hands intertwined. They weren't just friends. There was an undeniable, deep connection. The pieces slammed together with brutal force. Eleanor and Mr. Harrington were lovers, a secret, long-term affair. Harrington wasn't just a helper. He was her accomplice, her confidant. And the house, this specific house, was likely their secret rendezvous point, the place where she stored her deepest, darkest secrets, away from the Caldwell estate, away from her husband and son. But why was the notebook left behind? Had Harrington died suddenly before Eleanor could retrieve her secrets? It seemed so, given the estate sale was rushed. I slipped the notebook into my purse. It felt heavy, not with paper, but with 6 years of injustice. It was my proof, my vindication. But proof of what, exactly? That my former mother-in-law was a sociopath? The police had already dismissed the theft. To reopen the case, I needed more than a cryptic diary. I needed the final damning piece of evidence. I needed the Aurelia necklace. If Eleanor had kept her secret life hidden in this house, was it possible the one thing she truly sacrificed to ruin me, the necklace, was hidden here too? I bought the house, not because I needed it, but because the house itself was now the key to unlocking the truth. And I knew I had to search every inch of it. I had to find the Aurelia necklace, or else that notebook was just the ranting of a paranoid ex-fiancé. My new mission wasn't just about clearing my name anymore. It was about exposing the chilling, calculated nature of Eleanor Caldwell and reclaiming the years of my life she had stolen. I finalized the purchase of the Harrington house with a speed that startled Brenda, the real estate agent. She assumed I was excited about the vintage crown molding. I was excited about the vintage secrets buried within the walls. The house was now mine, a silent accomplice in Eleanor Caldwell's scheme, and I was determined to interrogate every floorboard and every shadowy corner. The first few weeks were a systematic, almost obsessive search. I wasn't looking for money or jewelry. I was looking for one thing, a small antique velvet box containing a heavy gold chain and an emerald. I was looking for the Aurelia necklace. I started with the most obvious places, referencing the notebook. The entries about H and Aurelia were sparse but highly suggestive. One entry, dated a month after the theft, simply read, "Safe, under the floor where he can feel her near." This was too poetic for Eleanor's usual clinical tone, but it implied the necklace was kept close to Harrington. Under the floor. I spent 3 days meticulously examining the library floorboards, the master bedroom, and the dining room. Nothing. The floors were solid, original hardwood. I moved on to the walls. Older houses often have hidden compartments or wall safes. I tapped every panel, looking for hollow sounds, starting in the library, the room where I had found the notebook. That room felt like the epicenter of their affair and their deception. After 2 days of tapping and listening, I was about to give up on the library when my hand brushed against the decorative trim surrounding the grand fireplace mantel. The trim was slightly loose, barely noticeable. I pressed on it, and there was a faint click. A section of the mahogany paneling next to the fireplace, about the size of a microwave, smoothly slid inward. Behind it was a dark, cramped cavity. My heart hammered against my ribs, a dull, frantic drumbeat. This was it. This had to be the secret safe, their private hiding spot. I fumbled for my phone's flashlight and shone the beam inside. The space was lined with felt. It held 3 items: an ornate antique silver locket, a neatly folded yellowed legal document, the velvet box. The small antique velvet box. My hand shook so violently I almost dropped the phone. I reached in and pulled out the velvet box. It was cool to the touch and heavy, just as I remembered. I didn't need to open it to know. The weight, the texture. It was the Aurelia necklace. 6 years. 6 years of being branded a thief. 6 years of lost love, all contained in this small, silent box. I opened it. The emerald gleamed under the flashlight beam, the sapphires catching the light. It was magnificent, and it was undeniable proof that Eleanor Caldwell had manufactured the entire crime. She hadn't thrown the necklace away. She had used her secret lover's house as a storage unit for her ultimate weapon against me. But the other items, they held more secrets. I set the necklace box aside and picked up the silver locket. It was heavy and engraved with the initials E.C. and G.H., Eleanor Caldwell and George Harrington. Inside were 2 tiny faded portraits, a young Eleanor, radiant and beautiful, and a baby, A child. I froze. A baby? Harrington was a lifelong bachelor, and the photo was young Eleanor. This wasn't just an affair, this was a history. Could they have had a child together? I quickly moved to the legal document. It was a certified copy of a birth certificate dated 40 years ago. The mother's name was redacted, but the father was listed as George Harrington. And the child's name? Michael Caldwell. The blood drained from my face and the room tilted again. I grasped the mantelpiece to steady myself. Number. It couldn't be. Michael wasn't the son of the Caldwell patriarch. He was the son of George Harrington, Eleanor's longtime secret lover. I snatched the notebook again, flipping through the pages, looking for context. And there it was, in a section I'd initially dismissed as rambling, early entry decades ago. The lie is set. My husband will never know. Michael is safe. He believes G is his Uncle George, a close family friend. G will keep his distance for the boy's sake. The Caldwell name is worth the deception. The whole picture clicked into place with horrifying clarity. Eleanor's husband, the true Caldwell patriarch, was infertile or unable to have children. Eleanor, desperate to secure her place and the Caldwell dynasty, had an affair with her longtime love, George Harrington, and passed Michael off as her husband's son. This meant Michael was never truly a Caldwell heir by blood, and this explained everything. The frame-up. If Michael were to marry me, an outsider with no family influence, Eleanor feared she would lose control over him. She was fiercely protective of the Caldwell name and fortune, a fortune that was technically only half true for Michael. The Aurelia necklace. The necklace was the ultimate symbol of the Caldwell dynasty, the one thing that had to be kept pure. By removing the necklace and blaming me, she not only ruined my reputation, but sent a message to Michael. I control the legacy, and I control who is worthy of it. The necklace wasn't just an heirloom, it was a lie, because it was only meant for a true Caldwell bride. The theft wasn't about the necklace, it was about control and lineage. I wasn't just a threat to her son's happiness, I was a threat to the family's greatest secret, that Michael wasn't a Caldwell. I sat on the dusty floor, the heavy necklace box in one hand, the birth certificate in the other. I had found my vindication, but I had also uncovered a truth so explosive it could shatter an entire dynasty. My personal betrayal was just a footnote in a decades-long saga of lies and manipulation orchestrated by a woman who valued a family name more than genuine love or honesty. I was no longer just a victim looking for justice. I was the keeper of the Caldwell family's original sin, and the power I held in my hands was terrifying. I spent the next 2 weeks strategizing. I had the smoking gun, the necklace, Eleanor's journal, and Michael's true birth certificate. But dealing with Eleanor Caldwell was like trying to disarm a nuclear bomb. One false move and everything explodes, potentially hurting the one person I still cared about, Michael. I had to approach this with the cold, calculated precision that Eleanor herself employed. My goal wasn't just to clear my name, it was to ensure Michael learned the truth about his mother and his identity from a position of strength, not confusion. The first step was to contact Michael. I knew he was still running the family business, still living on the estate, still under the heavy influence of his mother. I had avoided him for 6 years, afraid to reopen the wound, but now I had a purpose. I sent him a short, cryptic email to his private address. Michael, I found something. It's about the Aurelia necklace. It proves everything. Meet me at the Old Mill coffee shop next Tuesday at 4 p.m. Come alone, this is critical. Sarah. He responded within the hour. Is this some kind of sick joke, Sarah? Don't do this. I sent one final message. It's not a joke. It's the truth your mother has kept hidden for 40 years. If you don't come, I will send the evidence to the Caldwell family solicitor. That got his attention. He agreed to the meeting. The week dragged by. I placed the evidence, the necklace, the journal, and the birth certificate in a secured lockbox with instructions to my own lawyer to release the contents if I didn't check in with her by a certain time. I wasn't leaving anything to chance. When Michael walked into the Old Mill, he looked exactly the same, yet profoundly different. His tailored suit couldn't hide the strain around his eyes. He was hardened by the years, perhaps by the weight of a life I wasn't a part of. Sarah, he said, his voice flat. Why now? Why open this wound again? Because I found the truth, I replied, my voice steady, betraying none of the years of hurt. Your mother didn't just let me take the blame for the necklace, Michael. She stole it herself, and she framed me. He frowned, leaning back. My mother is many things, Sarah, but she is not a thief. No, she's a master manipulator, I countered, sliding the notebook across the table, open to the chilling entry about Aurelia is gone, and my performance was flawless. Read that. Read the initial H and the dates. Michael read the page. His face remained carefully neutral, but I saw a muscle twitch in his jaw. This is circumstantial. It's an old diary. It proves she knew a man named Harrington. It proves nothing about the necklace. You're right, I said, leaning in. A diary is just words. But how about this? I opened my bag just enough to reveal the antique velvet box. The emerald, even in the dim light of the coffee shop, gave off a malevolent green glow. Michael stared at the box, his breath catching in his throat. He reached out, his fingers trembling, and hesitantly touched the lid. No. Where did you get this? I found it in George Harrington's house. Your mother's secret lover, Michael, the man she referred to as H in her diary, the man she was having an affair with for decades while married to your father. The news of the affair visibly shook him, but the Caldwell pride was still fighting. You're grasping at straws, Sarah. This is insane. Is this insane? I pulled out the last piece of paper, the certified copy of his birth certificate. Michael, read the name of your biological father. He took the document, his hands shaking so violently he nearly tore the paper. His eyes scanned the line. Father. George Harrington. The color completely drained from his face. The man who had faced me 6 years ago with doubt and sorrow was gone. In his place was a shell of a man, stripped of his identity, his lineage, his entire life story. Harrington, he whispered, the name tasting like ash. He was my Uncle George. He used to visit every Christmas. He was a close family friend. Your mother didn't frame me just to protect the Caldwell name, I explained softly. She framed me because she saw me as a threat to her control over you, the secret son of her lover. She feared I would eventually uncover this lie, the one she built your entire life on. The silence in the coffee shop was deafening. He sat there staring at the documents, at the necklace, at the complete terrifying dismantling of his reality. What do you want, Sarah? He finally asked, his voice hollow. Revenge? To destroy my family? No, I said, putting the necklace back into its hiding place. I want justice. I want the truth. But more than that, Michael, I want you to be the one to expose her. You deserve the power to dismantle the lie that created you. I laid out the counterplan. It wasn't about calling the police. It was about exposing Eleanor on her own turf, on her own terms, during the annual Caldwell Family Legacy Gala, an event Eleanor always used to showcase the family's strength and history. We would use the Aurelia necklace as the final dramatic evidence, the literal centerpiece of her downfall. Michael looked up, a terrifying clarity in his eyes. The pain was still there, but now it was fueled by righteous fury. He was no longer Eleanor's puppet. He was George Harrington's son, and he was ready to fight the Caldwell matriarch. "Tell me what to do," he said. The heir of the Caldwell dynasty, now a man without a name, ready to burn the whole thing down. The Caldwell Family Legacy Gala was Eleanor's stage. It was a formal black tie event held in the main ballroom of the Caldwell estate, an annual showcase of their wealth, influence, and flawless history. This year, it was going to be the stage for her reckoning. Michael and I worked in secret for 2 weeks, coordinating the precise timing of the reveal. I didn't attend the gala, of course. I was the convicted ghost. I waited in the Caldwell guest house, my former home, with Michael's most trusted assistant, ready to enter the main house on his signal. The plan was simple in its execution, but devastating in its implications. Michael would give the annual toast, ostensibly honoring his mother and the family history. He would then bring up the topic of the Aurelia necklace, citing it as the symbol of their unwavering integrity. This would be Eleanor's cue to relax, to bask in her perceived victory. At 9:30 p.m., the text message arrived, "Go." I walked across the damp lawn toward the main house, carrying the lockbox that contained the necklace, the journal, and the birth certificate. The roar of conversation and orchestral music spilled from the open doors. I met Michael's assistant, David, at a service entrance. David slipped me into the ballroom through the kitchen, and I took position just behind a velvet curtain near the main podium. Michael was mid-speech, his voice amplified, clear and steady. He looked magnificent in his tuxedo, the perfect Caldwell heir, a lie that was about to be obliterated. And through all the years, through all the market fluctuations and personal challenges, one thing remains immutable: the Caldwell name, a name that symbolizes honor, dignity, and integrity. My mother, Eleanor, embodies this integrity more than anyone. She is the keeper of our history. He paused, raising his glass, and the guardian of our most sacred symbol, the Aurelia necklace. Eleanor, seated at the main table, was beaming, her eyes glittering with triumph. She took a slow, elegant sip of her champagne. This was the moment I had to move. Michael put down his glass. "Speaking of the Aurelia necklace, Mother, I want to address the dark chapter from 6 years ago. The disappearance of the necklace and the accusation against Sarah." The room stiffened. Eleanor's smile faltered slightly. "It was a difficult time," Michael continued, his voice softening with feigned sorrow. "The pain of that betrayal, losing a piece of history and realizing someone we trusted could do such a thing, it almost broke me. But through it all, Mother, you stood strong, protecting the legacy. You helped the police, you gave your statement, and you ensured justice prevailed." He walked over to Eleanor and took her hand. "You taught me that the truth always comes out, Mom. And tonight I've asked a very special guest to join us, a guest who holds the real truth." He looked toward the curtain. David pulled it back. I walked out, holding the lockbox. The ballroom, moments ago humming with conversation, went utterly silent. Every single eye was on me, the thief who had vanished into disgrace. Eleanor's face went white. Her composure, always her fortress, cracked. "Sarah," she hissed, trying to rise, but Michael held her wrist tight. "Tonight, Mother," Michael said, his voice now steel, "the truth does come out, and the truth is, the Aurelia necklace was never stolen." I placed the lockbox on the podium. The latch was released with a loud click. I opened the box and lifted the necklace, letting the magnificent, tragic emerald catch the ballroom lights. Gasps rippled through the crowd. "The necklace is right here," I stated, my voice echoing across the silent room. "And I did not steal it. Your mother, Eleanor Caldwell, orchestrated the entire event to frame me. She had her accomplice, a man named George Harrington, move the necklace from your family safe to his house. She sacrificed the most important family heirloom just to ensure I, an outsider she couldn't control, was removed from her son's life." Eleanor finally found her voice. "This is slander. She's lying. She probably just bought a replica." "No, Mother," Michael said, pulling her closer, forcing her to look at him. "It's not a replica. And it's not slander. Because the truth runs much deeper than a simple piece of jewelry." I picked up the worn, cheap notebook. "This is Eleanor Caldwell's journal, found in George Harrington's secret safe. It details the plan to frame me, but it reveals a much larger, darker secret." I flipped to the specific page and read the decades-old entry aloud. "The lie is set. My husband will never know. Michael is safe. He believes G is his Uncle George, a close family friend. The Caldwell name is worth the deception." I then held up the final document. "Guests, friends, family of the Caldwell name. Michael Caldwell is not a Caldwell. His biological father is George Harrington, Eleanor's longtime lover. She fabricated an entire lineage to maintain her status and control over this fortune." The collective sound from the guests was a mix of gasps and stunned silence. The Caldwell patriarch, Michael's assumed father, was elderly and frail. He was currently being tended to upstairs, spared this brutal scene. Eleanor was shaken violently, tears finally tracking paths down her elegant cheeks. But they were tears of rage and defeat, not sorrow. "You cannot prove this. You witch! You destroyed everything." "You destroyed it yourself, Eleanor," Michael said, his hand finally releasing her. He looked out at the guests, his eyes blazing with a pain that was now transitioning into freedom. "6 years ago, I lost the woman I loved because my mother chose her name and her secret over my happiness. Tonight I choose my truth." He turned to the main Caldwell solicitor, who was sitting, slack-jawed, at a nearby table. "I am submitting this evidence to the firm immediately. The matter of the Caldwell estate and its lineage must be re-examined. As of tonight, I renounce my claim to the Caldwell name and my position at the head of the company." The chaos erupted. Guests started whispering, murmuring, looking at the necklace, the documents, and the broken, defeated matriarch. I had cleared my name, but more importantly, I had given Michael the tool to rebuild his life, freed from the golden cage Eleanor had built. I watched as Michael walked away from his mother, past the stunned guests and towards me. He didn't look back at the shattered illusion of the Caldwell legacy. He only looked ahead. "What happens now?" he asked, his voice low but his eyes searching mine. I smiled, a real smile, the first one I'd had in 6 years. The heavy, tragic burden of the Aurelia necklace was finally gone. "Now we start over," I said, free from the stories she wrote for us. "Thank you for listening to this difficult confession. We are so grateful to share these stories with you. If this story resonated with you, please hit the like button and share your thoughts in the comments section below.